You ever met a woman who does everything for everyone, but deep down she's breaking into pieces? Yeah, today I'm telling you a story about her. She was too nice, too kind, too available, and it nearly destroyed her. But here's the twist. She snapped out of it, got back up, and learned how to stop being a doormat and start being a damn queen. You don't want to miss this. Because maybe, just maybe, this ain't just her story. It's your story too. Step 1, she confused kindness with people pleasing. She grew up believing that being kind meant always saying yes. If someone needed help, she dropped everything. If someone hurt her feelings, she smiled and stayed silent. She didn't want to upset anyone, didn't want to seem rude, didn't want to be seen as difficult. So she made herself smaller. She let people interrupt her, walk over her, make last-minute demands, and she always showed up. Always. But deep down, she wasn't doing it out of love. She was doing it out of fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being judged. Fear of being alone. She thought, if I just keep everyone happy, they'll love me, they'll stay, they'll value me. So she said yes when she was exhausted. She agreed when she disagreed. She kept the peace even when it cost her peace of mind. She was praised for being the nice girl, the dependable one, the one who never said no. And at first, that felt good. It felt like approval, like she was doing the right thing. But slowly she began to notice her kindness wasn't bringing her the love and respect she hoped for. Instead, people expected it. They came to her only when they needed something. They didn't ask how she was doing. They didn't care about her limits. She wasn't being kind from the heart. She was being agreeable out of habit, out of survival, out of the desperate need to be accepted. She thought kindness meant sacrificing her own needs, ignoring her own feelings, putting herself last every single time. Step 2, she lost her voice trying to keep peace. Every time a disagreement came up, she chose silence over truth. She swallowed her opinions even when her heart was screaming. She avoided arguments like they were fire, thinking that if she stayed quiet, everything would stay calm. She believed that peace meant the absence of conflict, even if that conflict lived inside her chest. So she nodded along in conversations she didn't agree with. She laughed at jokes that made her uncomfortable. She bit her tongue when someone crossed a line, told herself it wasn't a big deal, convinced herself she was just being dramatic. She apologized for things that weren't her fault, just to make things easier for everyone else. She said it's fine when it absolutely wasn't. She became so good at avoiding confrontation that people stopped even asking for her thoughts. They just made decisions without her, spoke over her, assumed she'd go along with whatever they wanted. And she did, because that's what she trained them to expect. Her silence became her reputation. Her agreeableness became her identity. But inside, she started to feel invisible. Her needs weren't being met. Her desires were never considered. Her dreams were quietly collecting dust in the corner of her mind because she was too afraid to take up space, to cause waves, to make anyone uncomfortable. The peace she was keeping wasn't peace, it was suppression, a soft, slow silencing of who she really was. And every time she stayed quiet to avoid a fight, a little piece of her disappeared. Step 3, people took advantage of her. People saw her kindness as an opportunity, not a blessing. They noticed she never said no, so they kept asking. First, it was little favors. Can you cover for me at work? Can you watch the kids just this once? Can you loan me a little money till next week? She said yes, always yes, thinking it made her dependable, thinking it made her loved. But the just this once became a habit. The late night calls, the constant emotional dumping, the one-sided relationships. She was always giving and they were always taking, not out of appreciation, but out of expectation. She became the friend they called when they needed something, not when they wanted to check on her. She was the one who helped people move, who showed up when no one else would, who lent money knowing she'd never see it again. People didn't even bother asking if she was okay. They assumed she was fine because she never complained, she never pushed back, and so they piled more and more on her shoulders. Responsibilities that weren't hers, problems that didn't belong to her, emotional weight that wasn't fair to carry. They made her feel guilty for resting. They labeled her the strong one, not to compliment her, but to excuse their own selfishness. She tried to believe it was love, that if she kept being there for them, they'd see her worth. But the truth was harder. They saw her as useful, convenient, the person who would always say yes, even when she was breaking down inside. And the more she gave, the less they respected her. Because people don't always value what comes too easy. And she had made herself easy to use. Step 4, she burned out emotionally and mentally. She started waking up every morning with a weight on her chest. Not from one big problem, but from 1,000 little ones she never dealt with. Because every time she ignored her feelings, every time she said yes when she meant no, every time she showed up for others when no one showed up for her, those moments piled up inside her like bricks, and eventually they became too heavy to carry. She felt exhausted all the time, but not just physically. Her soul was tired. Her mind was loud with overthinking, replaying conversations, wondering if she upset someone, questioning if she did enough. She was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflict, trying to be perfect, trying not to let anyone down. But in doing so, she was letting herself down over and over again. The smallest things started to trigger tears, an unanswered text, a missed call, a sarcastic comment. Her patience wore thin, not because she was rude or cold, but because she had nothing left to give. She was pouring from a cup that had been empty for a long time. The smile on her face became just a mask, one she wore so well that most people didn't even notice she was struggling. She became emotionally numb. Things that used to bring her joy didn't move her anymore. Conversations felt draining. Being around people felt like work. Her body was present, but her spirit felt distant, like she was floating outside of herself, watching her life pass by without really being in it. She tried to convince herself that it was just a phase, that she was just tired, but deep down, she knew. This wasn't about needing rest. This was about being completely depleted. Step 5. She had to unlearn nice girl habits. She realized that the way she had been living, always being agreeable, always putting others first, always avoiding conflict, wasn't strength, it was survival. It was how she learned to stay liked, to feel safe, to avoid abandonment. But it wasn't working anymore. It was costing her too much. So she had to unlearn the habits she was taught were good, but were actually keeping her small, silent, and stuck. She had to unlearn the belief that saying no makes you mean, that setting boundaries makes you selfish, that speaking up for yourself makes you difficult. She had to stop apologizing for existing, for having needs, for not always being available. She had to teach herself that it was okay to disappoint people sometimes if it meant not disappointing herself. She had to let go of the fear that people wouldn't love her if she stopped bending over backwards. That if she stopped being the helper, the fixer, the caretaker, she'd be left behind. That fear had kept her trapped in unhealthy dynamics for years. But she started to see the truth. Anyone who only loves you when you're useful doesn't really love you. She began noticing the ways she automatically softened her voice, second-guessed her thoughts, stayed quiet in rooms where she should have spoken up. It was so deeply wired into her that it took real effort to break the pattern. She had to retrain her mind to believe that her voice mattered, that her time was valuable, that her needs weren't optional. She started doing small, uncomfortable things, declining invitations when she needed rest, correcting someone when they crossed a line, pausing before saying yes just to check in with herself. At first it felt wrong. It felt unnatural. But slowly, those uncomfortable choices started to build confidence. Every time she honored herself, even in a tiny way, she chipped away at that old identity, the nice girl who never caused trouble, never asked for much, and never made waves. Sixth, her comeback was stronger because she found her worth. She didn't just bounce back, she rebuilt herself from the inside out. The version of her that once believed she had to earn love by overgiving, by overexplaining, by overextending, that version no longer had control. She had been to the bottom, to that quiet, lonely place where you realize no one's coming to save you. And it was there, in that stillness, that she finally met herself. Not the version shaped by expectations or guilt, but the real her. She began to question everything she used to tolerate. The friendships that only existed when she was useful, the relationships that drained her more than they filled her, the jobs, the routines, the patterns that once felt normal but were actually robbing her of joy. She stopped chasing validation and started choosing alignment. Instead of asking, do they like me? She started asking, do I even like this? Does this serve me? She started to protect her energy like it was sacred because now she knew it was. She stopped trying to prove herself. She stopped explaining her boundaries. She stopped shrinking to fit into spaces that never saw her anyway. Her decisions weren't fueled by fear anymore. They were led by self-respect. The same situations that used to break her spirit now bounced right off her because she knew her worth had nothing to do with how others treated her. It had everything to do with how she treated herself. Her comeback didn't come from revenge or bitterness. It came from clarity, from peace, from knowing that walking away from what no longer serves her wasn't loss. It was freedom. She no longer felt guilty for choosing herself. She wore her boundaries like armor. She spoke with a steady voice. She carried herself differently, not louder, just more sure. There was power in her presence now, not because she forced it, but because it came from a place that couldn't be shaken. So if you're that woman who's been too nice for too long, let this be your wake-up call. You're not here to be everyone's backup plan. You're not here to stay quiet just to keep people comfortable. You're not here to pour yourself empty so others can feel full. You were never meant to shrink. You were built to stand tall, speak truth, and take up space. The moment you start choosing you, your peace, your power, your worth, that's when everything changes. Let them call you too much. Let them say you've changed. Because the woman who finally finds her worth, she doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, she rises. And baby, when she rises, everybody feels it.